Welcome back to another IPS Film Room as we continue to go through NC State's transfer portal additions and high school prospect signees, guys they brought in out of high school. And today we're doing McNeese State guard Alyn Breed. I've got Jake McSwain with me again. And as always, subscribe to the channel at Inside Pack Sports. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you get all of those little notifications and different things once we post these. And Jake, let's jump into it. Alyn Breed, a guy who we feel like is, I don't know how you would label him. I feel like he's kind of the most polarizing player that has picked NC State up to this point, simply because it feels like there's varying opinions on him going into the season.
Well, I think it's really hard, and you'll see it as we get into the film, because there's limited tape on him from his college career. Like, he had a role at Providence. He was there for a few years. But, I mean, I think the last year of film we have on him from Providence is from 2021, 2022, I want to say. And then he transfers to McNeese. He sits out a year. And then last year he comes in, looks really good in 2 games, but that's all you see of him. So really over the past 2.5 years, there's just no film on him. So I think, like, Wade obviously has an opinion on him. And he thinks he has a specific skill set, but it's hard to prove that out in the film. So we're going to try to do that today. We have some film queued up, but wanted to get your take. What do you think about Breed? Like, kind of, how do you reconcile the lack of film versus what we know Wade likes about him?
I think to me, it always, you know, this, you've coached, you've played the game. It comes back more often than not to what the coach thinks. Right? Like, well, our opinions of the film it's going to be irrelevant if the coach believes in a player, if a coach trusts that player and is loyal to that player. My expectation is that guy tends to get the benefit of the doubt in the first crack, the first opportunity. And so that's where I am with Alyn Breed. Is even before we get into the tape and look at his game, the expectation I have is that he's going to have a major role, simply because he was with Wade at McNeese State. He was one of only 2 players he brought over. The other was a no-brainer in Quadir Copeland, who had already played in the ACC. So you knew his game would translate. And I think you could make the argument still, even with Breed. Like, if you want to argue the role, that's fine. But Providence in the Big East, he played there 3 seasons, I believe.
Yep.
So you've got enough you've got a feel for him on having a role in a P5 conference, to where I think the projection's fine. It's just ultimately, I think, where folks are kind of up in the air in terms of how expanded his role will be.
Yeah. And so I think it's a good time we can turn our attention over to the film. And what I want to point out before I even start this is, you'll notice it as we go through and look at some of his tape from Providence. His role completely changed. So he was not somebody who was, ball in his hands all the time like he was at McNeese State. Like, so starting off here at Bama, all the clips you're going to see from these first 2 games of his at McNeese, he's initiating the offense. Like, a lot of his scoring opportunities in those 2 games came from him getting into a screen and roll situation. So even kicking it off from right here, he's getting screens and he's getting downhill. And what I really liked was these mid-range jumpers. So you're seeing where this is going to be where a lot of his scoring comes from. He's pulling up from the mid-range, and he has a pretty good touch. Like, he's able to knock things down. And I really like just his ability with the ball in his hands. And I'm going to pause it for a second and point out, like, this is against Alabama. This is against a really good team last year that has elite size. And, like, that last clip, he's getting to the rim, and he's able to finish above, a guy who's probably 6'11". I don't know that guy's exact height, but that's a big dude, and he's able to get that ball up and over.
I mean, both of these first 2 shots were contested. Even the mid-range jumper, the first one, I watched it. I'm thinking DJ Horn. I mean, that's who it looked like. Coming off that high ball screen and just pulling up. If you're facing drop coverage at all, it's an automatic mid-range jump shot, right? And I think that's where I believe the upside is in Alyn Breed. Is, we've talked a lot, and we're going to. You missed on PJ Haggerty. You chose to go with Darian Williams. Well, there's some PJ Haggerty to his game if this tape can translate, because you can give him the ball and say, get a bucket,
Yeah.
create a shot. And that's what I think. If you just said on the surface, what is this team lacking? You would say, okay, who's going to be your go-to, give the ball to a guy and say, go get a shot for himself. And I think the hope is internally, I believe the hope is it's Alyn Breed, but you see some of that upside here in these clips.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so you keep rolling through these and it's really similar stories. Like, so you'll notice in the small details you watch film, the first 2 clips, he's attacking right. He's going off of a screen on his right and he's going. In this third clip, they move that screen over to the left side and he's still able to, dribble drive left, create some space when you're getting that drop coverage and get a shot up over a guy who can't stick with him in space. So those are little details like we talk about doing film and what you look for. Like, it's one thing to be a guy who can do one thing really well, especially with the ball in your hands. But when you can start to mix it in, like you're a threat going both ways, because on the college level, that's what coaches are looking for. Like, they're going to start, icing you on a screen if they notice, hey, he's never going the other way with it. So it's little things like that I really like to see from a guy's film like that. This is a little play that stands out, but we've talked about it. He's not the biggest guard in the world, but he can mix it up a little bit. He's strong. He's well built, well put together, and can just kind of mix it up down low a little bit. I think that'll be something where maybe people weren't factoring that into his game too much, but it's something he can definitely do.
Were you surprised by how much in these first couple of games he played on the ball, given what you'd seen from him at Providence?
Yeah, I am, because I started off watching the Providence film, and
right.
and watching what he does and trying to glean out what he does well. And he did have some on ball stuff. Like, he had a decent amount of assists, but he wasn't like the screen and roll guy, because he was playing with some dudes at Providence. I mean, he had Devin Carter on that roster. Like, he had some guys who eventual NBA players, and it's maybe taking an off ball wing kind of role. And we'll get into that when we talk about his shooting, but his role completely changed over that year and a half of him not playing at McNeese, like of what they're looking for him to do at the very least. But yeah, I mean, like, more like it's exclusively out of the pick and roll. And like, that's Mark Sears, who's at the NBA draft combine a couple weeks ago, was playing. I mean, like that.
Jaren Stevenson.
Yeah.
We did a clip breakdown on is the show and go defensive big there. Then you've got more size at the rim.
Yeah. And you talk about the strength, and like when you're looking at him, these are the kind of plays that stand out. Like, he's going into a crowd. You could argue this isn't a great shot, but he's able to elevate, absorb contact, not get pushed off his line too much, and still finish. Like, that's a really good move. He does the same thing on this play. Like, a guy gambles too much out on him, and he's going to drive to the rim. And I'm going to pause it here for a second, because what I like about this, and I've talked about it when State had like a Jarkel Joyner or Traquavion Smith, so many times you would see them change their release to where they're putting the ball out from their body, trying to avoid the contact and flip the ball up at the rim. And it's like, you don't get fouls that way. So, and I know it's a 2-game sample size, but when you switch it over and you're watching this play, like, as he attacks the rim, there's no, I mean, the ball goes that way only because he gets hit. Like, he's going into bodies, just putting his shoulder in there, taking contact, and trying to get a layup. Another one with him on Jaren Stevenson, a little forearm shiver to the midsection, create some space, and just and fade away. That's like that Casey Morcell shot that we've seen probably a million times when Casey was here. You know what I mean? Like, he can create space, and he's strong enough to do it. And that's how Casey did it, because he wasn't the most quick twitch guy on offense, but he could create space.
Yeah, I've been impressed with his strength. Like, a lot of getting into bodies and contact and still being strong enough to finish. Again, that when you're talking about, we've discussed a lot. Okay, the 2 guard spots, you're going to have Alyn Breed, you're going to have Paul McNeil, you're going to have Matthew Abel. What's going to separate them? Well, 3 additional years on the college level was a big deal from a strength standpoint, right? And so you're talking about a true sophomore, a true freshman. Physically, they're not the same as him. I mean, right, now they may have more physical upside, right, in terms of length and maybe natural athleticism. But when you're talking about a 23-year-old versus a 19-year-old or a 20-year-old, that's a big difference in terms of strength and conditioning.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then, we can continue going through this. Like, again, he's in a high screen and roll situation. Like, that's a nifty move. Like, people get concerned about like the missing on Haggerty, and I'm one of those folks of like, well, hey, do you have a guy who can facilitate offense and get plays going and get paint touches when Holloman's not on the court? Then you see him throwing moves like this. Like, I mean, geez, where's the ankles at here? Like that slide. I mean, that's a quick move. He's able to get it up, and that's the first three we've seen him take. But I think his jump shot looks solid too. I'll say that. Like, there's not like some guys are bad shooters and they look like bad shooters. I think he's someone who maybe has some not so great percentages, but you can see he's a pretty good shooter.
Well, and the thing is let's be honest, if you're taking a lot of those types of threes, you're not going to shoot a really good percentage, right? Like if you're taking off the dribble step back threes, but the bigger takeaway is he can use that to get the shot off. He's comfortable shooting it. It may not be a good percentage, but when you get in shot clock situations where you have to get a shot off, a lot of times, Jake, those aren't high percentage shots, right?
Yeah,
so
they're not going to be. Yeah.
Exactly. So you need guys who are comfortable creating space and getting that shot off. And yeah, while you may not shoot a great percentage from it, he's definitely willing to hit it.
There's still shots that you have to get off for sure. And so continuing through that, so that's the Alabama game. So that we're halfway through his year. The video quality gets a little more shaky on this one because it was at San Diego State, which wasn't a bad team last year, I don't think.
Right.
Either.
No, I think they won 20 games. Yeah, they were solid.
So I mean, they're not a horrible team, and have
South Dakota State. I'm sorry, South Dakota State.
Yeah, not San Diego State, but South Dakota State.
Yeah.
But they have some skill, and gets downhill, takes a little bit of contact, gets to the rim and finishes. Like, you're seeing a lot of similar stuff. He gets fouled on this jump shot, but created the space, got the look off. 3 points right there. That, I mean, we talk about getting into the lane and what we're looking for from him there. Like, that's one that you maybe look at him on film and say, is that an ill-advised shot? You know what I mean? But he's still able to beat his man, has him on his back, and throws up a shot and is able to finish it. And we talked about Haggerty, and hey, is he have some Haggerty to his game? And I think that's the type of play where you look at it and go, okay, that's where you start to see it. Like, he can get into the lane and finish.
Catch and shoot three.
Yep. Looks, I mean, in little things, right? Like we talk about it. How does their form look? His feet are in the right spot. He's generally able to square himself up to the rim. And from there, I mean, it's a release that's pretty straightforward, looks good, repeatable. I don't see any issues there. Like, I think he's someone that could be a steady shooter, if not a great shooter. Again, I'm going to back that up because it's an example of he does some fancy footwork. He does a little Euro step thrown in there, but he's not putting that ball away from his chest. He's not going away from his body and avoiding this contact. He's stepping through it, taking a lot of it, and then going right to the rim and just gets obliterated. That 2 free throws. Through 2 games last year, James, he shot 9 free throws, I think. So you're looking at 4.5 a game. I think that's attainable. That's something that he could do pretty regularly. Like, be another guy who puts that type of opposing rim pressure on the other team, making them guard, making them give you easy points, so to speak.
Yeah, I think the question is going to be ultimately, what is his usage, right? Like, what's his usage going to be when you're looking at, Darian Williams is going to be a high usage player. Holloman, Copeland, they both can handle the ball frequently. Is he going to get a ton of these types of opportunities consistently during the course of the game? Well, my takeaway from it is you want to have the option because there's so much projection there with all of these players, right? Like, outside of Darian Williams, you talk about Terrence Arsenault, Paul McNeil, Alyn Breed, even to a degree Trey Holloman. You're projecting a larger role. You're projecting more numbers, but you haven't seen it, right? Like, you haven't seen it. And that's where I keep going with Alyn Breed and I've used this analogy before, I think he gets discounted a lot because we just completely ignore these 2 games we looked at because it was only 2 games. So the fact that he averaged 17 and 5, we don't care because it was only 2 games.
Mm-hmm.
But theoretically, Jake, if he would have finished out the season at, even if you say 15 and 4 and was conference player of the year, how much better would we feel about Alyn Breed coming into this year? And how much better would you feel about NC State's season?
Yeah, people would be clamoring, right? Like you'd have super high expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And now, granted, it's a big if. Does he do it for
Yeah.
Does he do it for another 25 games or so?
But they
But
were expecting him to.
and they had the role for him. I mean,
Right.
like I said, you look at these clips, and it's like he's the ball's in his hands a lot. And this is a team where they're Javon Garcia ended up assuming those roles, and Quadir Copeland ended up playing more on the ball. So. He's obviously skilled, and they view him that way, and they gave him a long leash. They're running stuff for him. Like here, you see off of a dribble handoff, like that's a crafty little move. Like he's got some skill to his game to be able to know what to deploy, what moves to pull out of his bag and win. Like when you have a trailing defender and you throw a little pump fake. I mean that's 2 games he's made 2 people look silly. You know what I mean? Sears in the first one, then that one. Like that was just him getting a foul call, but that.
Are you surprised that he did not have a larger on ball role at Providence?
No, mostly because of who he was playing with, and it's sometimes it's hard. Like I mean, I don't know what his high school regards were. To have to look that up coming out of high school,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean. Sometimes the stats don't bear out, and if like they see something and you kind of get that recency bias of like, well, okay, his stats say this, right? Like when he attacks the rim, he's a below average percentile to like finisher. Like he doesn't finish that well, or he doesn't do this well. And if they don't give him more opportunity, they can never change those percentages. So it's or they pencil him into this role, and it's like you're going to be an off ball shooter, you're going to be an off ball spacer with, occasionally you'll get the ball in your hands and do stuff. So. I don't know. I think it's interesting, and Wade and staff clearly saw something in him coming from a higher conference into, was it the Southland for them?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. You look, but then I keep going back to the film and the 2 games from last year, and you're seeing him do things like that. Looks like Marcus Hill. You know what I mean? Like we're talking about what he can do, and he gets to the rim and is able to finish. So I'll pause here for a second and say, for the first time in an IPS film room, we've shown you every bucket from that player's previous season. We've got it covered. But we're going to shift, and we're going to show a little bit around his time at Providence. And what I didn't pull clips of, and I'll explain why, is I did not pull clips of him getting to the rim or going off ball screens because that wasn't the role he was typically filling. He shot the ball a good amount. He was able to share the ball, spread the ball around, he played within the offense. And there are some things I really like about him as I watched his Providence film. And I'm going to pull up my synergy numbers real quick, because for him, when you go back to the 2022-2023 season, we talk about the type of shots and how that impacts how you view a guy and how successful they were last year. Well, for him, on catch and shoot jump shots, specifically, when you look at his overall percentage, he shot 27% from 3 on catch and shoot looks around on 50 attempts, right? When they were like just pure catch and shoot, that goes up to 30% overall. Still not great, right? He took a lot of guarded threes. Like more than half of his attempts on catch and shoots were guarded, and he shot 23%. When they're unguarded, that goes up to 37%. Right? So you're talking about the type of quality of shots he can get.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll move over to the film for a minute, because what I want to point out is he moves really well off the ball. Like, so you look in this situation, he sees his man has gap responsibilities, and as that drive comes his way, the biggest mistake guys make on the high school level and the college level is they stand right there, and they're letting their man kind of be in the gap and still play the passing lane. You'll notice here, Breed relocates all the way near the corner and that's how much space he gets. So you talk about an unguarded shot, and that, I mean, that's a clean release that looks really good, and he knocks it down. Like you'll see there, like he stays home there because it's not the same type of deal. Like his man is in a zone, I want to say right here, so he
Yeah.
realizes that he has space and he can just stay home and shoot the ball. Like another one, like when he can get space and have room to look, that to me a good looking jump shot. Another one right here where you see they're running stuff for him, like they think he can shoot. It's a little pin, it's
Mm-hmm.
a little pin down screen action that just gets him wide open, and he's able to clean catch, clean shot. So I'm gonna pause there for a second, James. What are you thinking?
So I was looking at while we were watching that, I was looking at Providence and trying to figure out, okay, why not a bigger role? His last year there, according to Bart Torvik, he played 43% of the minutes, which was essentially the sixth man. He was a sixth man on that team at Providence. And their best player was 6'3" guard Devin Carter, who ended up being a first round draft pick with the Kings from Providence. So I think that played a role, right? Like in terms of
Mm-hmm.
blocking him essentially. They were playing the same position, and you're talking about a guy who ends up being a first round draft pick. So that kind of might have played a role in why his numbers and his minutes were suppressed there. But when you watch the tape, what I see is it feels like you're watching a totally different player, which I think is a good thing because you're now watching a guy who can play in space, can catch and shoot, can work off pin downs, can space against zones, not having to play or be effective with the ball in his hands.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that adds to his value because look, I think some people take our optimism for Alyn Breed to suggest we think every single possession NC State wants to give him the basketball and say, go make a play. No, we don't think that, right? We think he's going to be a part of the playmaking equation. But where his minutes are going to ultimately, I think, either be high or maybe when you're saying, okay, how can a Paul McNeil or a Matthew Abel maybe take minutes away from him? It's what we're watching in this Providence tape. How does he play off the ball?
Mm-hmm. That's gonna be so
Because
huge.
yeah, it's going to be so huge because we know you're going to run offense for Darian Williams. You're going to run offense for Quadir Copeland and Trey Holloman. This isn't going to be the Alyn Breed show. But can he mix in the playmaking and the scoring off the ball, but also get himself 4, 5, 6 points per game as an off ball shooter or slasher? Can he contribute in those areas? And so I think that's going to be big for him. And like we said, it's good to see he was comfortable shooting the ball off the catch because I think with Darian Williams and we talked about this, Jake. I think you've got three guys that had plus 25% assist rates last year.
Yeah.
So you've got three guys who are going to be willing to share the basketball. You need spacers. And
Yeah.
I know you've been worried about the 3-point shooting with the projected lineup if you didn't have a Jerry Ding in there.
Yeah, and I think like that's where the Breed's kind of the X factor. And I was really encouraged going through these clips because, and there's a few more of him shooting at Providence, but like he moves well without the ball. Like you didn't see it at the beginning, it got cut, but he's running from the other corner. He sees all of that action going on over here. I guess they played a lot of zone that year, but as he comes back, I mean, it's wide open. He's able to see spots where he can get there, and you'll see that exact same action again um, later in this clip package. But he knows when to stay home, when not to. But I think he's used to doing it before. Like he's used to being that pressure valve where a guy can make a cut, get the ball, get collapsed on, and know that Breed, he knows where to go. He knows where to be. Same action coming right here. Like they're running this for him as a shooter. I mean, so,
Mm-hmm.
like this is a double screen along the bottom against a zone where and you run these plays for guys that you think can shoot the ball. Like you're not going to waste time, running this for a guy you don't think can shoot. So he comes over to the corner, again, gets another clean look, and it looks good. And I recognize that these are all makes, right? Like it's
Yeah.
not something where we pulled he had a lot of misses that year too. But the reason I did it this way was just to one, show how he like moves without the ball. Two, they're running plays for him to shoot the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And three, when he's like it illustrates the stats. When he's open or has good looks, he is a substantially better shooter. And some guys are just like that.
I mean, I think that's the takeaway right there is the couple of clips where you see them running him off screens. You're not doing, like you said, you're not doing that for bad shooters. Because in that action, if you go back to it, in that action, you've got two guards playing at the top of the key. Hey, let one of those guards run the baseline and he can make the pass, right? Like you can choose against zones where you put your players. That's one of the reasons why I love facing zones as a coach, because I feel like I can dictate where the ball is going to go and who's going to get a touch against the zone.
Yeah.
And so, like we're talking about right here, they're basically running a 3-out, 2-in with two low post players. But this is Devin Carter with the ball, who I said was a lottery pick by the Sacramento Kings. He could be running the baseline.
Yeah.
Right. Like it doesn't have to be Alyn Breed. Alyn Breed could be, even if he's not in Carter's position, he could play the other guard slot at the top of the key. So his percentages may say, well, is he a shooter? Can he shoot? This is telling you Ed Cooley and Providence believe he can shoot the basketball. And a lot of times percentages, we've talked about this, Jake, they can fluctuate depending on opportunity, because a lot of times guys aren't comfortable. I really believe shooting of any trait, I believe shooting percentage is impacted most by minutes, because as a shooter, sometimes it takes you getting a rhythm. Sometimes it takes you getting volume. Sometimes it may take you getting to the free throw line, getting to the rim. If you can't get those things during the course of a game and you're shooting low volume, I'm not sure I expect you to shoot a high percentage. Doesn't mean you can't.
It's hard.
But
it's harder to do.
It's hard. Right. It's hard. It's not like you're expected to shoot that high of a percentage consistently. Whereas if you give him if you say, okay, well, Alyn Breed's going to play 25 minutes a night or 30 minutes a night, you're going to see, I think, a better shooting percentage from him than what he did the first 3 years at Providence, because we're already saying, we've established, you're not counting the year at McNeese. So you're going off of just numbers of the 3 years at Providence. And he's playing 30 to 40% of the minutes.
Yep.
So,
and a low volume. And a low volume.
And
the low volume thing from a shooting perspective, another thing that people might not automatically think of, but college gyms specifically, and where you're going from gym to gym with like a clear backboard and your depth perception issues of having basically 50 feet of empty space behind the rim. A lot of times it's hard to shoot, cold in a gym you haven't played in a lot before, where you it can throw your depth perception off. You have to get a few shots on it before you can feel really comfortable on it. Those are things it's not an excuse, but it's things that factor in, right? So I did want to go back to the clips because we only got a few more of them, but I like this one because it's another example of being able to know where to move without the basketball. So he sees a drive going away from him. As a player, when that happens, the defense has to flow that way, and he moves from the wing up to the top and just creates more space for him to get an open look. Again, I believe that's another action that's run for him where he's coming off of something here.
Yeah.
Might have cut off, but he's, coming in, getting a paint touch, popping out.
Well,
that might not necessarily be a play run for him, but it's still
it was
smart.
probably a Spain. I bet you it was a Spain action where you had the high ball screen and then him peeling up, setting the back screen for the big.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. And then he pops out, gets space, is able to knock it down.
And again, these are the actions simple basketball. If you're running a Spain, you've got a middle ball screen, you've got your 5-man rolling with your best shooter setting a back screen for him. And your other two guys are playing in the corner, spacing out. It's tough to defend, but the key takeaway is, how are they using Breed? They're not using him and just saying, go stand in the corner. They're saying, no, we want you as the guy that they're going to have to make the decision on of helping off of or not.
Yeah.
And popping to the top of the key. And so, we saw on-ball stuff. You're now seeing the off-ball stuff, to where when you start thinking about, okay, his upside as a scorer, where you're seeing it, I think.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a thing. So that's the clips that we got on him. Let me ask you this now, James. Now that you've seen some more stuff on him, and we've talked about him since he was the first commitment, I believe, for Will Wade, what are your projections for him next year? If you're putting together, this is what I think his final stat line is going to be, what do you think?
I think he's going to be a guy that's going to be between 12 to 14 points per game. That's where I am on him. I think when you look at how this lineup is probably going to play out for NC State, and that could be a little low. I mean, I was thinking about this earlier with Darian Williams. Williams had a great year, at Texas Tech, but he wasn't even their leading scorer this past year. He played alongside JT Toppin, who still averaged 19 points per game. And so I think because of the type of player Williams is, you've got an opportunity to still have, or you're gonna have multiple scoring options around him. Like, I'm not sure when I look at this roster, I'm going to see a roster that you're going to see the minutes spread between 10 to 8 for a lot of guys. Like, I don't necessarily think it's going to be that way. I think Darian Williams is going to score a lot for you. I think Alyn Breed is going to score, and then maybe one other guy will step up. Is that an Arsenault? Potentially. Is it a Vin Allen Lubin or a Paul Mbaya just getting some stuff around the rim?
Holloman.
Because of Holloman, is one of those guys going to emerge and be that third scorer? Because I just think when we watch the film on Breed and we know how we're projecting him under Will Wade, I don't know how you can see him and think he's not going to be at minimum a double-digit scorer.
Yeah, you would think. I was saying like 9 to 11 at like the low end for me.
Yeah,
I
think.
Like, and that's if other guys really emerge around him, and that's like if you factor in like a McNeil or Abel popping off or being better than you expected. But I still think I think that's kind of a worst case for him. I think he's going to have the opportunity with, Copeland on the floor and him on the court. Like, one of them is going to be handling the ball when Holloman comes off and starting things out and initiating. And I wouldn't bet against him still running a lot of pick and roll actions with Holloman on the court, because Holloman probably acts as a better off-ball spacer than he does at this point. So, he's going to have opportunity. I just feel like he's going to get first crack. Like, to your point earlier, like, you brought him in, you know him. You turned down a guy like a Javon Garcia who was probably more proven because you were excited about Alyn Breed. And, like, that's the kind of guy that gets an opportunity because you believe in him. And as a coach, that's one of the biggest things you can have in a player.
Yeah, I think they valued his overall skill set. Like you mentioned, Javon Garcia and his shooting ability, right? It wasn't simply let's bring in a shooter. I think they wanted a guy who could do multiple things. And we haven't even talked a lot about his defense. I know they regard him as a good defensive player. That was something we discussed on one of the recent platforms, how this roster is built around multiple guys who maybe are defensive first. You can make that argument. He is a guy who will defend. Ed Cooley, he's gonna force you to defend at Providence, right? Like, we know Will Wade is going to stress defense. So yeah. I think that's another element to his game that NC State's high on. I think this is a player who can potentially come in, like we said, and be your second or third best player. Now, how does that impact your ceiling? I think that remains to be seen, but I think he has a chance to be that for State.
Yeah. And that's the last area I wanted to touch on was defensive rebounding. I think he had 4 steals in 2 games with McNeese last year. Was a 20s to 30 steal a year guy at Providence, and that's in limited minutes. Like, he's going to help you out there, and he can move his feet and move laterally, and I think that's just a really positive thing. And then he also rebounds the ball well for his size. I think he had 75 his last year at Providence, which among guards was leading them there in minutes, in less minutes than those guys. So I think, he can chip in and help out in some other places as well.
Alyn Breed, we covered a lot of his offensive elements. We know he's a guy we think defensively NC State covets as well. Wanted to give you our thoughts on him. We took a look at his couple of games at McNeese State. Obviously went back to the Providence tape as well. So we hope you all enjoyed this IPS film room. Like I said at the beginning, subscribe at Inside Pack Sports on YouTube. Check out the website. Those of you who are coming from YouTube, make sure you check out the website, InsidePackSports.com. We've got plenty of content like this over there that we run daily. So we appreciate everyone. Talk to you again next time.